Since the dawn of humanity, we revel in it. For money and power, for control, for glory and a place in history. But wars are fought neither by the victor nor the loser. Wars are fought by the people. People fighting to protect their wives and children, their land and country, their freedom. No matter the outcome, the soldiers will never return home the same. Avis Winham was one such soldier. Inevitably, he returned a broken man, his missing leg serving as a grim reminder of what had transpired. This is the story of Scrapbeak. Avis Winham was a rag and bone man, collecting all sorts of unwanted items from people all around Louisiana. He would even head into the bayou, where all kinds of mad and wild stories transpired in search for the most unwanted of materials and items, and people respected him for that. They would await his arrival, seeking the birds singing from within their wooden cage he had in his cart filled with the most broken and unwanted of items. The birds were a particular trademark of his, and customers loved it. "The Birdman is here," they would shout. Avis Winham loved his occupation and was always out to find the most broken of items. Seems the more broken something was, the more interested he was in it. Without a doubt, trauma caused by the war. You see, the war undoubtedly broke Avis. By finding items and materials in as damaged and shattered a state as he was and fixing them, perhaps in some hopes the same would happen to him. We sometimes have an obsession with fixing those around us in hopes the same will happen to us. If not, it was a moment of respite from the madness. I bet by now you're picturing Avis Winham as a lonely madman living in a shed with no one but his pet birds as company. You wouldn't be far from the truth if you did. Avis Winham had met a woman on his return from war, and together they had a child named after him, Avis Winham Jr. An undying tradition, that one, naming your child after yourself. One which began from strict naming laws and discontinued due to the lack of tradition altogether. Having a child with this woman did not change much between them. No real affection, nor animosity even. All Avis cared for was his passion to find and fix things. The irony is unmistakable. But despite it all, I doubt Avis did it out of any real contempt. In reality, Avis was a good man, quiet and peaceful. Everyone around, neighbors and customers, could all vouch towards that. All but his neglected child and its mother. And who could blame them? But despite Avis Winham's negligence towards his family not being his intentions, it will still eventually come to be the cause of his endless anguish. The neighbors didn't like his son, Avis Winham Jr. Old customs die hard, and Avis Winham Jr. suffered due to them. You see, his father never really married his mother, even after giving birth to him, and for that, he was never really accepted into the community. With Avis Winham Jr.'s father's neglect and the neighbors renouncing towards him, he had no choice but to build a grudge. In his eyes, it was probably as if the world itself was rejecting him, and so he would come to reject it all the same. The bayou is filled with death and mystery, always has, and undoubtedly always will. Even before the scourge caused by the Sculptor became known, the bayou was riddled with death, people coming in by train and going back in coffins, and others would outright go missing. This was of the ordinary until a new threat emerged which frightened everyone. A threat people came to call Scrapbeak. Scrapbeak was unlike any other beast presented until now. For instance, unlike all the other major bounties appearing at secluded locations, only to be discovered by the clues presented from peering through the Netherrealm, Scrapbeak would leave clues of its presence all around the bayou. Soon enough, people had figured out Scrapbeak was indeed unlike the otherworldly bounties. In truth, Scrapbeak was absolutely of this world. In contrast to the spider, a creation of the Sculptor which was not created from scratch, but rather taken that which was present, twisting and reforming several human bodies, resulting in what would become a fleshy-looking spider. Scrapbeak is a creation that underwent a series of brutal surgeries done to modify its body in order to undergo a rapid regeneration and merge with the additional body parts, such as its beak. In other words, Scrapbeak is what you'd call a modified human. Without a doubt, not the work of the Sculptor. The methods which were used to modify Scrapbeak were brutal, but still not supernatural. And considering how brutal these surgeries were, it would have been unlikely for someone to undergo them willingly. Scrapbeak's sudden appearance in the bayou had brought terror within the grounds, and through urgent investigations, the American Hunters Association had discovered a murder case that was possibly linked to Scrapbeak himself. The link was none other than a court case with Avis Winham Jr., son of Avis Winham, as main suspect. The American Hunters Association had discovered that Avis Winham Jr. was being charged for over 25 murder cases, including his own father's, and pending ties to another dozen missing person cases. What had specifically caught their eyes was Avis Winham Jr.'s late father's deep relation with birds. Avis was pleading innocence, arguing against the claims of him being the murderer, and mysteriously inviting the jury to visit the bayou themselves. My suspicions behind Avis Winham's acts of inviting the jury to the bayou could imply the real murderer is in truth within the bayou. Reading through the attorney's interview, it even becomes clear a third party had hired a very capable and expensive lawyer to try and bail him out of the charges. It could be the American Hunters Association trying to get their hands on Avis Winham Jr., but half the documents presented to us are written by the American Hunters Association researchers themselves. That leaves us with the remaining suspicion, the murderer himself. Through the attorney interview, we also realize just how big of a grudge Avis Winham Jr. has against his own father. A grudge so big as to admit he brought the devil back to him. But who could this devil be? Is he referring to Scrapbeak? There is, unfortunately, no information nor hints throughout the Scrapbeak Book of Monsters as to whom it could be. We can only ascertain the existence of an accomplice, but taking a closer look at Scrapbeak's trailer gives us a clear enough picture as to whom it actually is: the Plague Doctor. Unsure of who exactly the Plague Doctor is or of his origins, but according to the Plague Doctor's description shared through Hunt's recent Scrapbeak event, which reads, "An encounter with a resurgent outbreak turned the Plague Doctor to arcane methods of fighting pestilence. Convinced that the New Orleans represents its evolution, here arrived to treat it with fire, leads, and his own array of ministrations. Seems he's encountered a very similar plague outbreak to the Sculptor's. The evolution mentioned could be the attempts of the American Hunters Association to grow against this plague, but inevitably joining it due to their own benefits. looking at it perhaps from a different perspective than ours. This might just be the Plague Doctor's attempts to fight not only the Sculptor, which is corrupting and influencing all into this maddening bloodshed, but also everyone else that is taking part of it. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to also subscribe to my Patreon or Twitch for early access videos. Until next time.